Hello again, and welcome back to the Battle of Cold Harbor. So, I've done quite a bit of work in camp. Spent about 300,000 getting everything set up. A lot of these units are about where they were in the side battles. I left a lot of these at 1250 because I'd have to add quite a bit more veterans to get them anywhere, and I was running out of rifles of good quality, so I decided to just leave them. You really only need 2 corps that are really bulked up for this battle. So these units are all extras that are going to get swapped in later on. I've got a bunch of fresh 1800 musket units, which are basically going to go in trenches and do melee. I've got my extra artillery. Got some cavalry. With these, I ended up dumping a bunch of recruits in to drop my 3 stars back down to 2. While the 3rd perk is useful, I don't like the price that I have to pay to keep them at rank 3, so I decided to just increase their size and drop them back to 2 star, where I'm getting most of the perk bonus, and all these are still have 100 melee, so that's all I really need. This is going to be my reserve corps. Units at 1250 again. They aren't going to be fighting for that long. We'll have this sniper that's almost ready to level up, but not quite. Couldn't get him there with even a max rank general. So this is going to be my corps for the left flank. It's going to be a little light on artillery, as I want most of it going in the right flank, and most of it's 1600, but there's a few units that aren't. They're mostly actually going to be fighting on the right flank with the way things get set up, and I'm going to be swapping stuff around later anyways. And I'm bringing 1 carbine unit to steal some supply wagons mostly. And then my corps on the right is all 1600s, all my best artillery, all the 20 pounders, 3 units of 24 pounders. Well, I'll be bringing in a 3rd unit. I'm bringing in some extra stuff instead, and just for the first phase. My units are all armed with a combination of 63s, 61s, Harper's Ferries, and Enfields. I ended up selling off my Springfield 55s, ended up buying all the farmers, and about 5,000 to 6,000 Enfields. I don't think I bought much of anything else. I think I bought maybe 1,000 Harper's Ferries. But we have these numbers are kind of small, but we've got a ton of money left over here, and tons of money left over with this sort of stuff. So I'm not equipping all of my 20 pounders just because I'm not quite sure how many I'm going to have going into the next set of battles, and wanted to have some leeway with unit sizes. So I haven't quite deployed all of those. I spent my reputation on men this time, as I have more than enough money and there weren't any weapons to buy this time around. Oh right, and I have this scout unit. This used to be Forest unit. I ended up, part of the reason I bought so many rifles is I wanted to be able to clear out the recruit pool. I did that and then reset this unit. The main point is I picked up the reconnaissance course perk, which gives you plus 20% spotting, which means this unit is going to when dismounted is going to spot as well as any of my 3-star sniper units. And the plus 50% stealth will actually make them significantly harder to be spotted than those sniper units. So I think if I would play this campaign through the next time, I would actually be making far more use of these. Set up a melee cav unit, get it to 2-star, and then give it the spotting perk, and then use it for spotting detail, just because it's going to be more effective at it than snipers, and you can arm them with crap carbines. And if you lose some, then it's not that big a deal. Okay, so we're at the minimum. These values are a little higher. This armory especially is a bit high. We're going to be facing scoped rifles out of nearly every skirmisher unit in this battle, which is going to affect a lot of how I have to play. With the UI mod making sure those large units of snipers actually do damage, they are extremely dangerous. So we're going to use a couple different ways to get rid of them. I think it costs me a lot more casualties than you would otherwise if you are not facing scoped rifles at this point. These numbers are going to be largely useless. It shows the values for both flanks, and it's showing all of my men, despite the fact that most of them can't actually join certain parts of the battle. So this isn't going to be super helpful this time around. But I added all those men, and scaling didn't move at all, like we've seen with the last couple of battles. So on day one, you either have to try and take the victory point immediately, and then hold off the reinforcements to try and win, or you basically don't get attacked at all. I don't like trying to win on day one, especially if you're facing scoped rifles where those units actually do damage. It's a complete disaster. I tried it a couple of times. Maybe someone who's better at that sort of playstyle can pull it off, but I certainly wasn't able to with any sort of reasonable fashion. So instead I mass artillery, hide them, and try and kill off as much artillery as I can. So I'm bringing 2 sniper units to the front. I found out that if you sort of stack their lines like this, you can pretty much fire in place and not block each other. I don't know why Merit came out this far this time, so I'd back off a little bit. I really don't want these snipers to be spotted, so I get them back into their double line where they can both fire, and just have my artillery keep working on theirs. If I can get rid of that unit entirely, all the better. I'm bringing the scout unit around the back where it's going to be able to spot and to get supply wagons. You would think that you could just bring the scout unit south, drop them in the woods there, and see things, but that still doesn't let you see anything around where the victory point is. So they're going to have to go somewhere else. Also, I'm focusing on Custer at the moment because he's mobile and has good spotting, and I don't want him running somewhere unexpected, so I'm just going to get rid of him while I don't really have a better target. It would be nice to slide the northern sniper unit around a little further, but it's hard to do that because he always tries to turn and fire at something else. So I'm just leaving him where he is. Around 127, 128 is when you want to start moving the scout unit if you're going to do this. You have to be a little careful because depending on the infantry move speeds, you can run into stuff in the woods and that causes problems. It's also worth noting here that this is one of those situations where even though you can't see enemy units, you can still target them. Or the AI can still target them. You can't click on them. This is probably similar to the other vision bugs that you can experience on some maps where you have the vision indicator that shows that you're hidden, but you can still get fired at. So this is probably the same thing happening for the AI in reverse. Moving a sniper unit down because there are a few skirmisher units that start trying to move around when these reinforcements come in, and it seems like if I put a unit on the road here, they like sense that the unit's there and don't try and move forward too much. If I just leave them both in the middle, then sometimes the unit will run straight across and expose them, and suddenly then a bunch of infantry charges, and then I'm left sitting with some skirmishers in the open and some artillery and no way to really deal with that problem. So moving the scout unit dismounted where its stealth is going to have the most effect. Mounted, even with the plus 50% stealth perk mounted, their stealth is like 75. It's horrible. I think it's like 950, something like that, when dismounted. So this is working pretty well. We're able to spot several units of artillery, get working on that. I don't really care about the infantry. That'll get dealt with in another phase. Being a little aggressive by moving those 2 northern artillery units out of cover. If something would come forward and spot them, that would be real bad. So that's the reason I don't start with any of the units further forward than I have them normally. But works out in this case. So again, the goal here is just get rid of as much artillery as possible because the stuff is all going to show up on later days, and if I can get rid of it now, it'll end up saving me quite a few casualties. There's a little bit of luck involved depending on stuff decides to go one way or the other. Where Thompson is, if I had an actual sniper unit up there, that would be really beneficial, but I've found that if I try and put a sniper unit up there, the stealth values just aren't quite good enough, and you do tend to get spotted if you move close enough to get vision. So hopefully they'll move back into range. It's also worth noting I turned off my supply wagon because these units are going to get a free ammo reset at the start of the next phase. So I don't need to be investing anything to keep them topped off because the battle's going to end pretty soon. Also worth noting, this is about the best I've ever had this phase go. Usually, inevitably, something walks forward a little bit, and I take some artillery fire on the snipers or something like that, and for whatever reason, nothing comes forward this time. So, this is pretty recreatable, especially with that scout unit in the back, but you definitely do be careful with your snipers up there, because if they get spotted, you basically have to turn them around and run away at full speed. So that was the first section. For the next section, I moved a few units around. I pulled the snipers from 3rd Corps and put them into 4th. I'm going to use a lot of snipers here to try and hit the enemy reinforcements as much as possible. Also worth noting, I don't bring the snipers that I brought in Phase 1 because they won't get a reload here, and they'll also basically be exhausted. And you can make it work, but you kind of have to let them rest, and then you have to let them reload. So I figured I'm just going to bring... Also, you kind of run out of space for 6 full sniper units, so I figured I'd just bring a few more of some other stuff, and then I bring some 10-pounder Parrots in there, which don't do a whole lot, but probably marginally more effective than trying to bring 2 exhausted snipers that are out of ammo. Also bring a cavalry unit. I'm going to try and get some supply here. It's really hit or miss if you can make that work. It really depends on where stuff ends up moving, and if infantry retreats in the wrong direction or something. I'm also leaving 1 unit at the flag down here because if you abandon it entirely, the AI will send a unit over and take it. But if you put anything there, then they leave you alone. Other than that, I'm sending most of my force to flank around in the trees to the north, and then I'm going to just sort of leave a token force from the south to sort of draw attention, and then I'll push them out of the trees. The victory conditions here are a little confusing. You have to have this flag that we're looking at here by the end of the phase, otherwise you lose the battle. Also, if that artillery unit has randomizes the stealth perk, you will not be able to see it very easily, and that makes this part a little trickier because you can't get rid of the artillery ahead of time. You also sometimes have problems that the units walking along the edge will get spotted, so you usually want to try and route the artillery before they get a little bit south of the trees. And then you want to try and stay on top of the artillery so it doesn't reset up and start shooting you from somewhere else. You also have to watch that you don't route it too far without a unit able to shoot it, otherwise it gets stuck somewhere that you can't get rid of it, and we really want to kill it off entirely. We also want to make sure we don't go too far forward and scare off the supply wagon because we want to capture that. They all have 25,000 in them in this battle, so you can make a ton of money off of it. I took my fire off of the artillery to hopefully let it stop so I can keep hitting it. Get a charge, that's actually good. It'll pull that unit out of position and let us get in from the top a little bit more. I shift into the cover, let off a volley, and then I retreat, block the charge, drop out the skirmishers to take the volley. Hits their morale real hard, but they'll take less losses. I think less losses than the infantry unit would have. But I think they were out of cover, so maybe that wasn't worth it. But either way, now we have that unit retreating. Working on the artillery again, got most of our stuff in position, and now we're going to start moving forward. The goal is to have the detached skirmishers move in from the north first so that they take any fire. There's also a third unit in there. I can't remember if you've seen it yet or not, but you have to worry about that guy a little bit. So I'm pulling snipers back, sending the cavalry in. Unfortunately, that routing unit is going to cause problems trying to grab the supply. Maybe I should have sent my detached skirmishers after it to keep it routing a little bit longer. Starting to pull the skirmishers up because the reinforcements are kind of coming soon. You have very little time in this phase, so I try and grab that. Doesn't work out. Have to run away. I'm going to take a bunch of fire. So that cavalry action was not particularly well done, but we're moving the rest of our units in. We're starting to get that position encircled. We'll be able to take it out pretty soon. So I'm taking a different approach to try and get that supply wagon. If we can get it, that will make up all the losses we took in that unit. You can see the reinforcements starting to come in. Snipers up there already working on it. Push the first unit out. Most of our fire is getting taken by the skirmishers. Get another weird, unexpected charge, but you know, I guess he's going to run out of cover, so we can work with that. Get the wagon. Have to try and get it out. Have a pretty limited line to try and get out of there. I go a little farther north to try and avoid the unit that's turning around. Not sure what to do there. And then when he breaks, now I click to the northwest. I should have clicked southwest. I'm going to pay for it in a second. But trying to think on the fly of how to get him out of here. And I get charged, and I think I'm safe. And we managed to deal with the problem down here. And then that unit stops, and we take a volley directly in the water in the flank and lose like 100 men right there. So if I selected that pathing slightly better, I think we would have made it out. Again, it's not the worst loss. You know, if we get the wagons, that makes up. We can replace that, but never like to see that. But now we can basically just set up the sniper line and just most of these units will just try and walk south. They won't really try and engage you even if they see you. So you can just pour a flyer into their flanks and get a bunch of free kills. I think about going for that wagon, look at the scenario and realize that's not going to work. So I'm trying to swap my snipers out so that the shorter ranged ones are in the north and the longer ranged ones are in the south, where they're going to have a hard time hitting stuff. Maybe I should have left that, because then I would have been able to hit the artillery a little better. Not sure. But we're in a pretty good spot. We've got our artillery coming up. We've got the wood line we want. We've got the objective. We've got the snipers in place. Now it's just to see how much damage we can deal on top of what we've already done. So I'm going to try and take out, I want to take out that artillery, and I want to take that wagon. So I'm setting the cavalry in again. And we've got that unit, that both of the infantry that are retreating. We take a charge. It's not great, but we've got support, so we'll be able to deal with it. Not sure why my cavalry is not firing here. Like, they're in range. I hit stop, but they just don't fire. They're reloaded as far as I know. Yeah, they're reloaded. They haven't fired at all. So I just, at that point, I have to charge, because otherwise I can't wait around. If I take canister, the entire thing falls apart. So, took some losses on 5-3, but overall this is going really well. We got the snipers in. We're in good position. Now at this point I decide I've done enough damage to that. I really want to try and get my units out of melee so I can grab those two wagons. Deal some extra damage to the artillery when we can, because this artillery is the stuff we can't get. Some weird pathing, but we get one wagon. Yeah, on the left flank is where you have a lot of trouble getting rid of the artillery. So, you get really lucky, get both wagons with 0 seconds left. I don't get double charged. If that battle had gone any longer, that would have been bad, but works out. So that phase went pretty well. Here I shifted the snipers and cavalry back to where they go. Moved the musket units into the first and second corps, and most of the artillery there as well. Just because that means they all spawn more or less directly on top of the center waypoint and don't have to walk very far. Definitely make saves in camp here because the deployments are a little weird, and if you shift stuff around, it'll save you a lot of walking. So I pull all of my artillery fairly far back because I don't want them taking collateral fire or being visible. This is a very exposed position, and if you leave your units, like normally I would position my units about where that vision point is, but if you do that, you're just going to get mauled by artillery, so I back them up further. Leave a few infantry in the north. You do need to leave some stuff there. The AI will be opportunistic and take stuff if you don't have anything there. Even if you don't have vision, it seems like it just sort of knows their stuff. The AI in this game is usually pretty good about respecting when it can and can't see things, but every now and again there's a few scenarios where it's like, okay, it definitely is getting a little input that there's not actually anything there that it shouldn't be able to see. The 24 pounders also get pulled back a little bit just because they take a lot of collateral damage if they're further forward in the woods. I don't want to lose any guns too early. I pull the units all out of the trenches so that they can't be seen and spend a little less time taking fire. We've done a good job of getting rid of the artillery, so we didn't get a free artillery to walk up and shoot, but now we're just going to let stuff start. I guess we did get one artillery walk up. Two, actually. Usually there's one in the center that I think I got rid of this time, but leaving the snipers up in the corner to work on the artillery up there, and then they're going to start working on the infantry. And I'm using all musket units in the front line here just because you need units to sit there and draw fire for a little bit. The fortifications here are all good except for that left one where you just saw the skirmisher route. That one gets flanked pretty easily and can get shot from, it gets shot from relatively far away. Visually it doesn't seem like you should be able to take fire, but you can see, I think Barton is shooting me from out of range. And so I really shouldn't be putting units here. It'd be much better to just have units standing in the woods there, and they would perform much better. Because now I've had 2 units route, and right when a charge comes in. So that's not really a good situation. But we do have 2 24-pounders aiming in there, and 2 fresh units behind it, so they should be able to deal with this situation. Though we're going to take pretty high losses on 10-1 rifle because of this. But we've routed 2 of them already. We'll get the 3rd one as soon as the artillery recharges. There's... Moving the skirmishers forward, there's a question of whether I should be using complete rookie musket units where the casualties don't cost me anything, or if it'd be better to put more experienced units in there with better rifles so that they clear out the infantry faster. So in this case, I decided to go with the musket units for the more of the cheaper casualties than fewer of the more expensive ones. This will also train them up pretty well, and my goal is to have those musket units in place so that when I did get charged, they would do really well in melee and get their melee skill up, because they're going to be doing a lot of it in the next 3 battles. But apparently, because the AI calculates against the melee values, they looked at the musket value and said, nah, we don't want to charge that, so they stand around and fire a lot. And, I mean, even rookie units with muskets in these fortifications is going to basically trade about 2 to 1 against infantry in the open. So there's not a lot of units in the north. There are units in the sort of fortifications in the far north, but I'm pretty safe to move along the line that my skirmishers are moving at the moment. Just got to make sure there's no infantry that retreated back into that path. Snipers are starting to deal with stuff sliding to my left. I put a unit in the fortifications again. That's again a mistake. We route that unit ahead of time, but there goes my unit again. I really just should not have done that. I probably took an extra several hundred casualties just from putting units in there. Hop in there just for the melee at the last minute, and other than that, get the heck out of there. It's just The fortification is just positioned badly, and you just take losses from all those units piling up on the right, or on their right, I guess. So I'm gonna grab a wagon in a second, and then we're gonna be able to get units behind their lines. So I talked about how I didn't like to try and win on day one. I don't think that's a good idea anymore since they have changed things. But this is the phase that I would recommend trying to win at, because as you can see, there's almost nothing up there. All their infantry is on the south. There's some artillery south of the victory point, but that'd be really easy to clear out if you brought in an infantry-heavy force. You would... If instead of all these extra artillery and some snipers, I brought an extra 6 or 7 infantry units, they could all be walking across right now. I could set up... I'd have to push the artillery out, but I could probably set that line up and then have their entire line pinned between me. And it would be very easy to win in this phase. It's also worth noting that despite you having 24 deploy slots for this section, you only get 21 units. It's a little frustrating. Just so many more options of what I could do if I had those extra 3 units. Just either better infantry coverage, more artillery, more snipers to get more of them up there. Like 3 cavalry units could probably crush through most of that artillery while the infantry is busy down here. It'd be really nice if you could pull that off, but no luck. So we're holding pretty well so far, even though we've taken more damage on the left than we should have. We've got 11-1 sort of moving back and forth to threaten anything from sliding too far over. Though I want to try and keep it back because I don't want to get hit by the artillery too much. Let's see, what is that? 10-3 rifle should probably be starting to move down along with its skirmishers to sort of cap that side a little bit more. At this point I pull some units out of the trenches to try and get the infantry to come closer. Sort of like to incite a charge into my muskets if I can. Also sending a skirmisher around the far right side of the map. I know I saw some artillery fire coming from the east, and I know that small unit of artillery is still there, and I want to try and get vision on it. I don't really know what's there, and I just saw my unit come out of column, so there's got to be something in the area, but I'm taking the risk to try and get rid of the artillery. But overall, we're trading very well. So I had to pull the musket units out, put my better units in, just to start beating down on those units. I don't think I'm going to get charged at this point, and just want to start clearing that down. We only have an hour and 40 minutes left, so there's very little extra time in most of these maps. Since it's just phase transitions. So you want to do the damage you can when you have time. You get lucky, finally notice that sniper had gotten vision, pull them out. There's definitely a little bit of a black hole in that gully there where you can't see stuff, so you got to be a little careful with moving into those positions. Yeah, overall this is going really well. Got some of the artillery spotted, getting rid of it. Looks like they finally decided to go for a mass charge. Of course, you know, on that left side again, where we have better units in place instead of the muskets. I try and cancel the charge because I don't really want to deal with it, but it happens anyways. But we're going to be able to dump a lot of fire in there, so we're going to win this fight handily. That unit breaks, pop into the fortifications, hop into the fortifications on the left side. Probably a good idea at this point because I'm directly in melee, and we just routed some of the units that are going to be dumping fire in. That charge we managed to cancel. Yeah, at this point, 10-3 should definitely be coming down. Like, I should have that entire tree line occupied, I think. Then I'd be able to hit all these units in the flank and do a bunch of extra damage and wrap them up. I think that would have been the better play. But we're going to hold pretty comfortably. I guess we lose that breastwork. Again, taking too many losses over there, but all those units are flanked. The 24 pounders are firing. They're not going to do anything there. Starting to get darker. We're starting to lose vision. There's at least one more artillery unit in the center there that I'd like to get at, but we got to deal with that. Get that last guy killed off. But you can see with the size of their units, once we break this charge, we're fine. they're not going to be able to do anything else to us today. Trying to get vision on stuff, sending this detached skirmishers up there to walk straight into the middle of it. Send these guys down as well. I just really want to get in there and get that last artillery unit, get rid of it, because if I can get rid of that, then I'll be pretty set for the next phase. Just rotating some units out as they take damage. You know, we've taken about 600 losses on all of the musket units. So, you know, we probably could have taken a little bit less if we'd put other units in there, but those losses are very cheap. So we find that last unit, Elder, take some art. I charge him, make sure he doesn't fire again. He just fired, so that's probably actually the wrong choice. I probably should have waited, sat there, put 2 volleys into him, and then charged him. But I just want to try and wipe him out. Fortunately, there's some infantry that's retreating that direction, and the other infantry is, you can see Drake. So towards the end of the day, the AI will try and regain the trenches. So if you are going to win on this day, Z Standard is in there, maybe Steward in there as well. So you would need to get enough infantry up there to repel them when they start coming back. You want to try and be in that tree line, or actually you could just be further back and just flank all the fortifications. So our attempt to get rid of that artillery didn't work out too well. We were going to take a lot of losses on those skirmishers, but maybe if I'd gone a little bit earlier before the infantry came back, maybe that would have gone better. But a couple hundred extra casualties there. Speaking a little bit more on winning on this day versus going further, I think going all the way through is, I would say, probably a good idea on anything but Legendary. On anything but Legendary, you're going to have such an advantage by that point that you're going to be fine. They're probably going to have worse weapons, going to have worse training, everything else. But on Legendary, especially in my situation where they have the scoped rifles, I'm going to face like 15 units of 3-star skirmishers with scoped rifles on day 3, and that is a giant pain. And the left flank on day 3 is also pretty dangerous, and depending on how that goes, you can take an extra couple thousand losses very easily. Just because you're spread really thin, you're not in great defensive positions, you don't have a general over there, you don't have supply. So for all that, that's why I think winning on this day is the best idea. Especially if you're going low casualties, absolutely win on this day. I'm going to finish this up with about 5,000 losses and 30,000 kills, and we've got, I think that's, 6, 7, 8 wagons, something like that. So I charge in, because I want to save the wagon. Turns out I don't need to. They're low morale, and they stop. So I'll exchange a little fire there, and then back off. But snag the free wagon. It'd be nice to get a couple more, but the rest of them are sitting in the middle of their infantry, so they're not going to get it. So yeah, going back to that point, if you're going for low casualties or you're not too confident on playing the rest of the days, well, they get a little harder. Definitely just win here. You can see would have been wide open if you send some infantry up there and hold that position. You know, even if you get charged, then you come out of the trenches and go the other way. So, alright, so that was their first major attack. Now we go into the next 2 phases. Not a whole lot's going on. So I have shifted a bunch of newer units in because these aren't going to do a whole lot, and I'll just give them some free experience. Put a bunch of extra artillery in on the core on the left flank. It's hard to do a whole lot there, so we're just going to try and snipe off some artillery. And then I have some extra cavalry placed into this core to see if I can exploit some stuff on this flank. So for phase 4, on the right side of the map, you're going to get 14 units of your right core. All of them are going to get reloaded again. You get 6 from your left core, and then you get 14 from your reinforcing core. Actually, I think it's 13, because I should have had 4 units of cavalry, and I get 3, so I think it's 13 for some reason. Not quite sure why the deploy numbers work out like that, but So, same basic setup, pull everything out of the trenches so you don't get seen. Back up the artillery. You do need to leave some infantry in position. Like if you completely abandon the position or something, they will walk forward. Perhaps I should have done more to try and bait them out. There's a couple different ways you can do that, but it seems a little hit or miss. So I'm going to push my units up into the trees here. There's very few skirmishers until the enemy's second corps arrives. I think all of their skirmishers are in fortifications. That's the reason I'm pulling my units out of the fortifications in the center, because there are scope rifle skirmishers in there, which if they can see you, they can hit you in the trenches, and you can't hit back. So you're pretty much just taking losses. You don't have to worry about getting attacked in the bottom at all. So I'm going to be setting up to try and roll up their left flank a little bit. Otherwise, you kind of sit around this phase and don't do a whole lot. So I wanted to try and get something done other than just having artillery fire. If you're worried about supply, like you can see, I left 200,000 to let me do whatever I needed to. If you're worried about supply, just turn off your supply wagons in this phase and just let your artillery fire as it will. You aren't really going to get attacked, so you don't need to worry about saving anything. And you'll get a free reload in the next phase as well, so you can just keep taking advantage of that. So on the left and in the center, I'm just setting my units up so I can spot a few things and then just let units blaze away and gain some experience, whittle their numbers down a little bit. So just waiting for stuff to reposition. You see that one unit on the end only has 1,000 men. It should be fairly easy to get rid of, even if we have to just melee it out. I don't think you can actually flank that position from outside of it, so probably take a while. The amount of you could grind it down entirely. I'm going to end up meleeing it, but the targeting for that unit is really weird. Like it seems like it reduces their range almost. So you can actually move artillery and stuff pretty close. Like right now, I would expect to be taking rifle fire, but they can't hit you. Don't know why. Maybe it's probably just a visual thing, or it seems like you think they can fire further than they can. But we'll take advantage of it. Just move up a bunch of artillery, have cavalry in position to exploit that hole once we make it. Setting some detached skirmishers up into those positions. I could send snipers up there and try and get a little bit better spotting, but once the reinforcing divisions come in, then there's some more skirmishers that are free and will walk around up there, and they'll usually run into you. So I just don't want to leave the snipers where they can get seen. Done pretty well at not taking many sniper losses this battle, so I'm happy about that. Potentially, like you can see the units in the north are pretty weak. You could probably set up to try and crush that flank as well. But the positions are a little worse. There's some cannon that you're not going to be able to get to. Like their left flank has almost no artillery on it. That might be because I destroyed so much on day one, I'm not sure. But even the reinforcing stuff doesn't come down here. So you're free to just set up in the open like this, and if you do that in the north, then you're going to get shelled. So pulling a bunch of skirmishers out, they're going to try and take most of the fire from this. I'm going to try and have my newest unit go through the woods and go in first to draw the heaviest fire. And then from there I'll just go through the gap. So I send them up, timing doesn't work quite right. They take the first volley, but then they get slowed because of the terrain, and then we're going to have our 2 stars take the second volley, which isn't great, but just going to try and charge this unit out so we can get going. We only have 2 hours, so not a lot going on in the middle. Still just getting vision and blasting away at those units in the fortifications. Probably not the most money efficient. Probably better to wait until Hancock shows up, but not too worried about it. I'm going to have so much money by the end of this battle that it's not going to be a problem. So I made a mistake. I should have had my cavalry in position. Like, they should have been following right behind that charge. So they should be hitting. They should be chasing that unit, destroying it right now. But we broke one unit. That second unit's about to go. And then we can just keep swinging up. And my goal for this attack is mostly I want to open up a gap so that I can try and get units into their rear and spot their artillery again. So we can see a couple of units coming up. And those are the units that I think I think what I probably should have done in it right now is I should have moved some detached skirmishers out into the open and tried to trigger some charges from those units. So that infantry tried to push forward into like 24-pounder and infantry range. I think that would have probably let me do more damage to them. Debatable if I really need to. Holding the center on day 3 is not the problem. But I'm not sure where those units, if those units end up in the center or on the side, so maybe doing more damage might have been a better plan. But this is going well. So we've got the snipers through, we've got the cavalry able to start going through, so I'm gonna start going up the board edge and see how far I can get before I run into something. I think the main advantage of sending now that I think about it, the main advantage of getting those, trying to get bait charges in the center, would be all these free units that I'm starting to run into here would hopefully not have been available. Well, I guess some of those I pushed out of these fortifications, so I'm not sure if that would have changed a whole lot. So I'm trying to sneak the cavalry up. Going pretty well, but then I realize I get flanked, and what I can't see is I think there's a sniper unit, or yeah, there they are. That unit's in the fortifications, and I can't get past them, so I'm going to pull out all the cavalry because I realize I'm not going to be able to get up there and do what I want. I'm going to send the scouts because they're still stealthed. Now that I've dismounted them, I'm going to see how far I can get with them. I think my infantry here is a little too far pushed up. I should stay in the line of woods below the field. I think that would be better. Because there's two... You can see I have too many units and not enough cover. So I can't really form a good concave here. So if I back up a little bit, they're going to be a little bit better cover, but when they come forward, they're going to run into a bunch of stuff. So now I see I've run into a second line of skirmishers. They've helpfully left the board edge empty for me, so I'm going to try and slide my units sideways through there. Might be able to move in column by just dragging right along the board edge, but I figure this is a little safer. And if I do get seen, then I don't get flanked. Oddly enough, they're sending artillery up this direction. I'm not really sure why. I don't feel like I've seen that before. And there's nothing up there for them to really see, but well, if I can get my snipers up there in time, I can take care of them. Though depending if they don't stop, then I have the problem of if they see me, then that's really bad. Who's a major general down here somewhere? Looked like a stray shell. So I'm trying to target these guys to get them to stop and rout. Sometimes the AI responds a little differently once they get targeted, even if they haven't hit yet. Push one unit off, and then hopefully I can route that second one before it reveals me. Thankfully, artillery has pretty bad spotting values, especially when limbered. So, I'm starting to get set up in the line that I should have taken in the first place. And now we start pushing our luck to see how far we can push those snipers forward. Fortunately, we're starting to get spotted there. So I'm going to start taking some fire. Maybe I should have just rushed through at this point. Like, moved the scouts around to draw fire or something and just gotten those snipers up into the corner. Because once they're up there, then I probably could have hit some stuff, but it's hard. I don't really know what's up there, and it's pretty risky already. So I send the cavalry forward to try and clear out some skirmishers, run in some other ones. So we'll wipe out one of them, but then we basically have to back out. There's just too units up there are all small, but there's just too many of them. So definitely starting to take losses with the snipers now. Take some losses on the cavalry. Really, that's why I didn't pursue further, because I was just going to run into another row after row after row of that sort of stuff. More snipers, more infantry, and so it's just not worth taking the losses with the cavalry. I think that's part of the reason I don't use a lot of cavalry late game, is you basically are forced to take losses with them, and they could do really well with those losses, but I just don't like taking them, so just don't. This is one of the I guess you can use them in Washington too a little bit. You have enough space. This map in Washington, you tend to have enough space to do a little bit with them, but there's so many battles before this where I would just rather have other units. So at this point, I see some more units moving up, and I'm just like, okay, I've pushed as far as I'm going to go. I can't get any more artillery. I'm just going to get these guys out of here before I screw up and get spotted. And because all it would take is one of those 3-star scout units moving up there, and I'd lose everything probably. So just getting them out did good. Got most of an artillery unit. Scouting forward a little bit, but there's nothing that's going to charge me anymore. Keep trying to take those fortifications up a little bit. It's good for us, just free kills. And here we can see them, and then we run out of time. But okay, so now a second flank where the AI basically doesn't do anything. So I'm pulling most of my units up. And unfortunately, with the setup I used, I have no units on no infantry on the flag. I always abandon the center. I don't think it's worth holding. You're pretty close to the lines, and you're spread thin enough as is. Again, pulling people out of the fortifications, because some of them are in range to get shot or shelled. And we're just going to get the snipers in spots where hopefully we can see enemy artillery. I don't have my best stuff over here, but I do, the 10-pounders with accuracy will do pretty well. And so the AI realizes that I have nothing there, sends a unit over, and now I have to rush a little bit to try and get in position. But there's thankfully a fortification we can hop into close enough to slow them down, and they'll turn over and try and fire as them instead of just walking north and taking the flag. Pretty sure I could have gotten it back even if they had taken it. Like their positions are pretty terrible down here. And that unit will get pushed back pretty soon. Actually leads to the interesting question of, should I spend more time posing that there's no units there to try and draw extra units in over and over? Not sure, maybe. But now we've got our infantry shifted around, and they're going to get taken care of. On the north, very little happens. Even if you stay completely hidden, the AI basically doesn't do anything. It's really nice that skirmish unit keeps charging into melee. Free kills for me. But you can see there's a lot of artillery on this flank that you just have no chance to being able to see. See a little bit in the north up here, but that's it. So we're going to work on that if we can, and other than that, we're going to just take the fire from the rest of it. Not sure why that infantry unit's moving over there, but we're just going to set up to deal with it. Took some losses on the snipers. Missed that when I was rewatching it. Probably just got too close and probably got revealed for half a second, and then a bunch of infantry fired at me, or artillery fired at me. But we're probably going to be able to take out 1 to 2 units of artillery, so that'll be a pretty good time. Sending some units to go find where that guy is in the woods, and then we'll get some stuff firing at him, because if we can clear him out, then we can move a bunch of stuff up and get into a better position. So yeah, now I pull these units back, so hopefully they will be out of range of the artillery or out of sight. This is where potentially I could pull 7.4 rifle back and see if they come for the flag, even if I'm not there. But we don't have all that much time left, and I'm not sure if it's really worth it. Better to just not be in vision and not taking casualties at all. Might make the second phase a little easier if we kill off more here, but I'm not really sure how much benefit I can really get out of it. And most of my artillery already has targets, so it's not like I really am looking for more to do at the moment. So in some ways I could probably bring even less infantry here, but you need it a little bit, and if something decides to walk towards you and you don't have it, then that's real unfortunate. So I think I have the wrong sniper unit in this section of the map. I think, because I have one that's super close to leveling up, and if I had brought the right one here or in another phase, I might have been able to get him all the way to have 3 stars by day 3, which would have been nice, but oh well. So, okay, so 2 boring phases are over. Now on to the hard part. For this one, you can see we're facing about 80,127 guns across both flanks. I have swapped almost everything out. I've got a few of these fresh units that haven't fought at all, but they all have pretty good experience. I don't really need them to do anything. I decided to put units that need more experience instead. These are all my injured units. I've pulled out pretty much everything that was less than 1250. The 3rd Corps has a little, mostly 1250 units in. They shouldn't get hit too hard, though it depends what the AI does. I've got a little bit of cavalry to try and exploit some things. It'd be really nice if I got those last 2 units, but you don't. The first 6 units will come in on the right flank. The first 3 units of the 2nd Division will show up on both flanks. And you can see I've moved some extra 24 pounders in here to have a little bit more infantry suppression on that side. I think you get 23. Yeah. So in here, buffed up, put in the muskets again into the trenches, and mostly newer units. So that flank can be a little bit, or that corps can be a little bit lighter because they don't get attacked as much. Really, your fourth corps needs to be really strong for this part of the battle. So about 60 to 80,000, pretty good situation. So this flank, same basic routine, though I do pull back a little bit on the far left because there's a bunch of snipers and stuff in the top of the map that I want to try and get them to walk down into the center rather than starting a rolling fight along that line on the left. So I'm going to try and convince them to go in the center. Pull everything out of the fortifications again, like usual. So you can see I'm backing up a little bit. I want them to sort of walk forward, and then I will sprint units into the trenches and hit them when I can get them at point blank range rather than taking fire from their 600 range rifles. The artillery here can be a little further forward because I've gotten almost all of their stuff, so I'm not really worried about counter battery at this point. I'm going to have a smaller second line. Alright, I forgot to really talk about that. It's very important to have a strong second line in that first major attack in the 3rd phase. Otherwise, you will get rolled over if the AI detects you don't have enough there, and it'll just even if you have muskets in there, it'll just charge you, and it has enough units, it'll eventually take you out. So definitely important to have a strong second line there. So I'm leaving a lot of skirmishers sort of in the middle here. You usually don't get attacked too hard, and if you do, you can shift other units to get there. I'm abandoning these forward fortifications. They're alright, but their fields of fire are not great. Your vision in front of them isn't great, and you tend to be firing at units in cover. So, just abandoning those. And eventually going to flank around on their left again, but I need to wait a little bit for those units on that side to all cluster around my victory point down there. And once they're there, then I can take them out. So you can see a lot of the remnants of earlier days coming in, and those snipers are all going to start walking for it. And you see them pop in and out, which is very annoying. But until it gets a little lighter, you have a hard time seeing them. I leave that unit in that detached skirmisher unit in the forward fortifications there to try and draw units in towards them. But you can see I'm not facing a whole lot in the center here. So that first skirmisher unit walked in, took fire from multiple angles. But I'm still waiting for stuff to come forward. Don't want to, because they could be in the trees across the river stream there, and don't want to get into that fight. So a couple units showing up, so I pull the skirmishers back. See units starting to come in, so I bring the snipers around, and it's where they're going to sit for a long time in the battle, because I pulled the stuff into the center. Now I'm going to have to defend that area, and it's sort of the weakest part of my center line, but I'll have some pretty strong defenses on the left, so it'll be fine. So, run into the fortifications, get some free shots on their skirmishers, and I move that detached skirmisher up to find out if there's anything else to the north, and it looks like there isn't, so I'm pretty happy about that setup. It seems like I got everything south of me. That means I can be already sort of start the encirclement, otherwise I think there's a few units in the fortifications up there, but that's alright. The main thing is getting those skirmishers down where I can hit them reliably with my artillery. I see some cannons over there, so I send a detached skirmisher unit out to try and spot it. Should have halted those skirmishers right now. I made the mistake and let them go too far forward, and then they get spotted and taken out. So I see some other units moving west, so I decide to scout across the creek and find out if there's anything there. If there isn't, then I can move up all my infantry. It's looking good. So things are mostly stabilized, just letting my artillery blast away. So, start sending the infantry up, send the cavalry over. There's usually nothing in the fortifications over there. That might be because of how much damage I've done on earlier days. Should have moved the scouts earlier, but they don't like to mount when it's... If you hit mount while the game is paused, it seems like it just doesn't work most of the time. So I can see there's nothing there, so I get snipers on the flank, infantry on the flank. And I'm going to ride the cavalry all the way up and around and take out one of the main batteries that's usually always there in there north of the camp. I think it's the only one that can still hit my main line, so I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'll be mostly free from artillery fire, other than like one or two other units. Most of their artillery is on their left flank. Managed to get almost everything else. But you can see they keep coming in the north there, across that river, and running into good fortifications and getting taken out, so. Kind of prefer if they were more in the middle, just because that's where my strongest point is, but this is acceptable. I see some infantry coming up there, which isn't great, so I'm not sure what I did there. I feel like I have enough as many units up there as I normally do, but they decided to get aggressive. And they see the skirmishers in charge, so I run for the fortifications and then hop my infantry in there, and that should be enough to deal with those 2 small units. So you can see, so the infantry there, I could put them in the tree line where the snipers are if I was getting harder pressed in this position. But most of those units have decided to shift west for some reason. Sometimes those units will decide to aggressively go after the victory point and charge those 2 units in the fortification there. Then I usually put the infantry in the line of trees and get a lot of flanking fire on those to support that position, because that position is kind of weak in a lot of cases. So I send another skirmisher out, get rid of that artillery, going on the flanking move with the cavalry. But because they aren't pushing that southern position very hard, I can start setting up for what I need to do in the next phase, which is there are 6 units of like 600 or 700 man 3-star skirmisher brigades that are going to spawn in at the start of the next phase, and they all have scoped rifles and they are a pain to deal with. So I'm going to dedicate a, in many ways, ridiculous number of men to trying to trap them and get rid of them before they start spreading out and doing more damage. So I've still got an hour left, so I've got time, but I'm just kind of starting to bring more units over there. And you got to be a little careful about this, because if you weaken that southern part of the line too much, then you'll trigger some charges. But they spawn in a very wide area, so you need a lot of units to deal with it. It's very annoying. But this is going pretty well. They're attacking a little bit, sort of splitting up their attack, bringing 10-3 on the flanks to hit them as well. Dealt with the problem in the north, though for whatever reason I still don't have the victory point. I'm not really sure why. You would think 2 units in the fortifications on top of the victory point would cap it, as opposed to the people who were standing outside of the fortifications. But apparently the victory area there is a little weird. So I'll get it soon. Though it's probably a really bad idea to let that go not contested. I don't think it's a problem. No, I don't pay enough attention to my cavalry, run right into their artillery, but it works out. Yeah, I guess I can let that go non-contested as long as the timer isn't 0. Which is good. Would have been really frustrating to accidentally lose the battle right here, because I just wasn't moving a unit. So, starting to get everything set up over there. And because those units are so big, and they're all 3-star, even though they're equipped with sniper weapons, they will be pretty dangerous in melee, so you want to make sure you're far enough back that you can hit them, but not close enough that you get into melee instantly. Which is kind of hard to do, because they're big enough that when when the skirmisher units turn, they're just so wide that they tend to walk into you and draw you into melee, which is really annoying. So apparently they see some of those units moving over and they charge. I should have. So we get the supplies, pulling the cavalry back to help deal with the skirmishers, sending the scouts up to start getting vision. There's a problem just south of the middle victory point that I should have corrected. 11-1, or no, 10-3. I should be pulling him back right now because that unit's sliding over. It's going to get closer to him. Instead of firing at the unit in fortification, it is going to turn and volley at me in the open, and that's not going to go well for me. Yeah, he needs to be moving right now, but I don't catch it. So that unit that retreated is coming back over, so I've got to go deal with it again. So, yeah, just took a volley, lost like 100 men. And it's, if you really, really want low casualty numbers, that's the type of stuff you have to be on top of. Because, you know, it's not that big a deal. That unit's fine, it can keep fighting. It is still combat effective and everything. But you do that 5 or 10 times, and well, that's 1,000 casualties, and those add up really quick. So that's the type of little nitpicky stuff that if you really want to get good results, you have to try and avoid. Either don't put your units in those positions, or just have to be more on top of checking everything, either by either being more observant, playing on a faster speed or slower speed, pausing more, that sort of stuff. And I don't know, I'm already pausing a whole lot in this battle. There's a lot going on. Just really hard to manage everything well without doing that. And I really don't care to play on half speed, so I don't do that. So pushing the snipers up a little bit more. Stuff's starting to escape north a little bit more, which is not great. Finally find that artillery unit that's been hiding there. It disappears into the woods again. Almost have my line set up, which is good. You have like 20 minutes in the next phase to correct things over here if you need to. So if you have to fight more, if they attack on your right more before pulling the infantry, you can do it. But yeah, you can see how long a line that is, and that's the area you have to. That's the spawn area because they all come across in a line more or less. If they don't have scoped rifles, you probably don't need to do this. Just set up a line in the woods, let them come to you, and kill them that way. But if you're outranged with your infantry, then doing that is painful because they'll just spot you in the woods and just shoot you until you go out to get them, and then you have to chase them across an open field, and they'll take a lot of losses there doing that. Okay, so that went pretty well. Now, what is probably the hardest part of the battle, because, again, you don't have a general, you don't have supply, you're really spread out. Your fortifications in the south are real good. Your fortifications in the north are pretty bad. Again, I don't hold the center. I pull those units back as opposed to sending them on one side or the other because I don't know which way the AI is going to go. This is one of those maps where, really like most of this battle, the AI is pretty good about if you overload one side or the other, it will go after the side you don't overload. So I can't commit too heavy to one side or the other until I really know where the AI is, where its focus is at, and then I can try and send reinforcements over that way. Like I've tried before, I'll overcommit to the north and then they'll go after the south, or I'll overcommit to the south and then they'll go after the north. So I've sort of got to split a little bit. My goal here is optimally to either get them to go completely at the south or to sort of ping pong back and forth between the north and the south. If I can do that, then I save myself several thousand casualties. The big difference mostly seems to be, though, can I prevent them from going after me heavy in the north? Because I just don't have a great position there. They have better cover if they're coming after that position. They have a lot of artillery up there, so the goal is to have, there's going to be at least an initial attack, so you can't just hide your units entirely up there. But you can, if you have enough units in place, these guys are going to come in, and then you blow them back, and then they sort of just sit around, and then they decide, oh, maybe I should go down south instead. So I see the initial units come in, so I've started, my free units I'm going to send to the north, and hopefully then I'll hold everything off. So, keeping some units in the center to try and get vision. There's a little bit of attack going on down here. That's fine. You're going to take a lot of cannon fire down there, but that's not that big a deal. So I'm sending the 24 pounders. I think I was thinking about sending them all the way north. They get into the trees here, that's not great. But this initial wave you can usually hold off fairly well. The problem is if you get really heavily engaged up here, they tend to get into the trees eventually. And while you can get them back out while you still have ammo, if it happens towards the end of the battle and once you're out of ammo, then everything's firing so slow you can't overcome their morale regen, and that's where you just start bleeding troops because you're just sitting there firing at units in heavy cover, and that ends really badly. So I'll sort of pause there to assess what my options were. Think, okay, they're definitely... I think I'm screwed because they're committing... I think they're going to commit heavily to the north. So I'm starting to send more units up and around. Thankfully, I'm mostly able to keep them from flanking me on my right up here. That's where it gets really dangerous, is they'll sort of come from the middle and then come into that spot, and you don't have a good angle or you don't have enough units to really deal with that. So just sort of shifting around. Got that unit out of the woods, that's good. Holding pretty well, they haven't pushed too hard. We got that one unit in the woods up there, which isn't great. If we can get him out, then we're pretty much set. Because they've abandoned the fortifications on the northern edge of the map, which is always good news. One of their artillery units popped his head out. Fortunately, there's a couple of 3-star, like 500-man artillery units sitting there that I can't see. And those are going to inflict a lot of losses. But I seem to have held them off on my left. Still got to be careful from those units that are retreating sort of in that direction. But just sort of setting up. Now I'm starting to see units coming south. When I see the units going south, and especially in the woods there, that's when I know I think I have this phase wrapped up. Because once that starts happening, usually they start committing everything south. And then you can start getting snipers and stuff in position. Like, you can see they're sort of moving there, but they aren't really attacking. So you can just set units up on the side and just wail away at them. Fortunately, my snipers are kind of busy. Like, they're either stuck up in the north or they're trying to deal with infantry up here. And I think when I was playing this, I hadn't quite realized that they'd fully committed south yet. So I was still worried about committing too much aggressively to try and hit those units in the swamp. Yeah, some artillery decides to walk up for whatever reason. Not really sure why. But I'm setting up to... You'll also see a lot of this. The units go places and don't really respond to you even when they see you. So you can just get a lot of flank fire into them. It's really nice when that happens. Sort of swapping units out in the fortifications down there, going back and forth between, do I want to take less losses or do I want to be able to apply better fire? So running a unit out just to put a volley into that artillery and get rid of it. And then I'm going to send some skirmishers forward to see that supply wagon there. I think there might not be infantry there, so I'm going to explore a little bit and see where... Because when they go... That's the other thing. If they go north, their lines are usually pretty solid. There might be some stuff in the south that opens up, but I'm not really sure. I've poked at it a little bit, but I'm usually so busy trying to hold the north that I don't have time to go exploring in the south. But when they all go south, then usually gaps start opening up in their line. And then you can start sneaking stuff in behind, steal supply wagons, get at artillery, that sort of stuff. If you can get them to commit to it a little earlier, then you can really get some stuff done. This is another example. The AI just wants to go south and is ignoring the fact there's a unit it can see firing into its flank. So I can just sit there, putting rounds into him, and he doesn't respond at all. So you can see a couple units are going north now. So maybe that isn't the best idea. I really want if those units go south, then I can bring my snipers into better positions. But But overall, this phase is going excellently. So, full disclosure, I played this last day probably 6 or 7 times, trying to get my total casualties under 8,000 for the day. The big difference seemed to be, can I deal with the snipers on the right flank effectively, and can I manage this flank effectively so they aren't really fighting me for most of it? Like here, like, you know, they're in range, but they're not really committing to much. If they go hard, especially in the north, like, you'll take an extra 2,000-3,000 casualties in this phase easily. Not a lot you can do about it. So managing to play this phase well is what keeps your casualties. It seems to be that if you're going all the way to day 3, it's the difference between do you break even in manpower or do you come out ahead on manpower, which is again why I really recommend, in most cases, probably just win in that 3rd phase on that first major attack. It's going to be real easy, and you'll come out way ahead in manpower. So you can see I sneak a skirmisher through the gap in the line. My scout down south didn't lead to anything other than getting routed and then having skirmishers charged in my line, so I got to shift a guy down there. Screw up with the snipers, take a volley, but we'll survive. And a couple of those infantry units coming out is real bad, especially scouting that, but at least I've got some 24-pounders there that are going to scare those units off, and we don't have much time left, so I'm pretty safe anyways. I'm gonna try and get that wagon before the timer expires. But you can see here when they clump up in those swamps, if you could get it a little bit better set up, get those snipers down there, you could do so much. But we just don't have time. But just barely get the wagon. And now the last part. So we get dropped in where we were. We've got until about 2051 when those units spawn in. So I guess you have almost 40 minutes. So you definitely have time to get in position if you need to. But overall, you can see this is pretty much going to be a mop-up phase. There is actually a phase after this that you can go to, but it's similar to Day 4 Chancellorsville for the CSA, where you can only get a draw out of it. So no reason to go to that. And I think it's just an extended timer on this phase. I don't think it sends you back to the left flank or anything like that. Though I haven't actually played it myself. So I can see they're starting to go into places, go towards the center again, so I'm sort of starting to wrap my flank up from the south and going around to the north as well, because I saw their artillery come down, so I know there's nothing left up there. There's a artillery position up to the north of those skirmishers that unit McHenry usually sits in, and once he comes down, then you know there's nothing up there. I don't know, maybe I should have brought, when I saw stuff moving, maybe I should have brought the 24-pounders to the east and used that to reinforce against the snipers. Don't know. Not sure if maybe I could have gotten them there in time if I moved them immediately. Hard to say, and usually I got pretty lucky they didn't really attack down there too much. If they attack harder down there, 24-pounders going to be busy. Maybe I should have brought more 24-pounders to this battle. Hard to say. Or at least had some more available, because getting a couple more of them down on this side of the map would definitely give you a lot more security in terms of if the charges do come in, you'll just blow them away. You can see they're shifting pretty hard to the north, so I need to start getting more units up there soon. They've pretty much abandoned going after the center. So I'm bringing some more units down to just make sure I don't get overwhelmed up there. I think it probably because of where I had the snipers this time around is they started retreating north from them as opposed to east. See the massive line popping in. routed 2 of them. We have a pretty good position. We've got them caught. This is where the battle gets a little hard to control. You know, I'm fighting multiple skirmisher actions in multiple parts of the map, dealing with charges all over the place. I start compressing from the bottom. I think that's where I screw up. Also, I need to be focusing more entirely on the skirmishers right here. Like, I should be backing 3-1 rifle and that rifle unit up slightly just so they don't get caught. I probably shouldn't be moving for those units at all in the north. They should just be staying there, and I shouldn't be moving any of the units in the south because it's going to force the AI to charge north. Like right there, like I can't be moving these units up. It's just going to cause that pile in the north to go up, and I need to be moving, like 3-3 rifle needs to be moving back right now. Otherwise he's going to get caught. But I'm distracted by stuff going on in the north and trying to manage all that. So I don't catch it on time. See, now it's already too late. I probably couldn't save it there even if I completely retreated 3-3 rifle, and now they're through the lines. There's a massive infantry there. My only option is charge and see how much damage I can do. Also, shouldn't have moved this. I don't know if it would have mattered. I should have left the shock cavalry on the north edge. Probably wouldn't have mattered. I think at that point the pathing logic said we have nowhere else to go. Let's just go this way. We do get 1 surrender with the unit that's split. That's good. But now we need to start sending everything north to try and keep those guys contained before they break out. Because if they break out, they're going to be a giant pain to deal with. And on the upside, we managed to basically contain everything up north. Not sure that sending the cavalry in there was actually a good choice. I probably should have pulled them out and just hit the units that were sort of like that most northern unit. That's the one I should have charged. I should have waited till one break isolates itself and charged that one. So I'm just hitting it one-on-one as opposed to like pretty soon that cavalry is going to be fighting like 4-on-1, even though they're routing, and routing melee damage is still really high in the base game. So walk into melee there, not really what I wanted to do, and now it's causing other units to go north, cause me some more problems. So I'm going to use the scout unit here to try and use the rapid fire ability of the Spencers to just keep all of these units routing until my other units can catch up. Which actually works out surprisingly well. It requires a ton of micromanagement to keep the unit in the right place, but does its job. So yeah. Routed by a bunch of routers. Always fun, but oh, don't send a lone cavalry unit in the middle of 4 or 5 other units. That isn't going to work well. But everywhere else, this battle's going pretty well. A little, you can see in the north that I don't have anything on my northern victory point, so I'm going to have to fix some stuff up there. Which is not great, but all these units are pretty much destroyed, so if I put anything in their way, I'll take care of them. Trying to micro everything, trying to get all these units running. I don't want to run directly at their skirmishers. I want to run past them so that I can lock them back in again. But again, the scout cavalry is doing really well because whichever unit sort of recovers its morale, stops, tries to fire at them, and then gets a volley in the face and runs again. And the reload times are so fast that I'm able to, even with partial shots, I'm able to keep everything on the run. Screwed up with my detached skirmishers up there. I should have walked them further around so they weren't able to take flank fire. So that skirmisher unit is going to get closer than I'd like to the flag, but I'll manage. We run into Chapman, who's another, like he wasn't even part of the group that I was originally going after, so even more problems. This section of the battle was very frustrating. it ends up working out, but not pleasant to play at the time. I was hoping I finally had the contain right. Screwed it up. So finally got rid of that artillery. Now we can basically just wait. Try to get that guy out of the range. Doesn't work, so I give up and just let him volley and then melee. Sending some more extra infantry units up there. But you can see, despite, if we can get past this last step, then the battle's over. They've got nothing left. It's just wrapping everything up with the least amount of casualties. So we're going to have the shock cavalry go after Chapman and get rid of him. Should have paused the scout cavalry so they can get melee there, but oh well. Again, we have several hundred extra Spencers lying around that we aren't going to use for anything else, so we only need that unit to be at 2 stars, so replacing them is going to be pretty cheap. Well, I guess not necessarily cheap, but more than eminently affordable. And down to 2 units up there, so almost got that situation taken care of. We're about to have that unit completely flanked. They'll shatter pretty easily. So we get into melee, I decided to charge, see if we can get another surrender. Cavalry loses its major general, doing almost nothing. But now we can just start closing the gap. We've still got 2 hours left, so plenty of time. Probably should have shifted more infantry to the right from the south here. Like I'm doing finally now, but I probably should have been in that position earlier. A couple units in the north still. Need to retake. Lost Walnut Grove Road again. It's a really good thing that is not an instant fail. So finally got that cleared out. Now we just have to wrap up everything else. And we find yet another annoying skirmisher unit showing up out of nowhere, taking more losses to our own that we don't really have anything in position to deal with. But I'm just going to bring some infantry down and we'll get rid of them. At this point I could probably be a little more cautious, but I'm just sort of... It is really hard to maintain focus for a battle this long, especially, because the battle's over, it's just cleaning it up. You could probably play it better than I am if you really focus on it more and take your time, advance with skirmishers and all that, but usually by this point in the battle, I'm just taking a giant line of infantry and saying, go over here, kill anything in your way, and be done with it. This battle's alright. The ones after it, I don't care for at all. This phase of the campaign for the Confederates is just not particularly interesting to me. So hard to really play as well as you can when you're just trying to get it over with. So hopping in the fortifications when we get charged. Getting rid of that last sniper unit. Then we get a double surrender out of that melee, which is always fun. See, I still don't have very good vision, even though I have units all over the place. So I just start sending infantry forward now, saying, okay, whatever's left, let's just get rid of it. Still haven't succeeded in really getting rid of everything in the north, but I've got that backup skirmish unit up there, so it'll be able to hold that off, and even in the fortifications. So yeah, overall, battle has gone pretty well. It's just the wrap up at this point. Getting a lot of surrenders, got a bunch of wagons. Like, we're probably going to end up with, what, 250,000 in wagons or something like that. It's a very lucrative battle for capturing stuff. We actually got a little unlucky. Sometimes you can capture significantly more of the those snipers that spawn in, especially if you don't let them out of the pocket. And you can get a real haul of sniper weapons when you do that. But even what we did, or we didn't get a ton of captures, you know, we're still going to end up with something like 800 Whitworth TSs and like 400 JF Browns, which is going to solve our problems with having enough rifles to equip our sniper units with. So we'll be able to boost them all up to, probably boost them all up to like 375, because I'm still not going to use more than like 6 to 8 of them. So we'll probably boost them all up pretty big, and that'll help us for the next couple of battles where the snipers and long-range artillery are going to be doing most of the lifting. Goal will be to get through the next side battles with relatively, well, definitely manpower positive. I think we can do significantly better than a couple of them. So we'll have to see. It's been a very long time since I've played those battles. But I think it should be possible to just set up and blow your way through the fortifications with a really good artillery and sniper corps. So we'll see if I can actually pull it off, but not worried about it. More port play, just let my snipers take yet another volley while they're trying to go back to their parent unit. The other thing worth noting in this battle is even when the mission timer runs to 0, and even if you've destroyed every single unit on this section of the field, the contested timers have to run down to 0 before the battle actually ends. So theoretically the battle should end right here. We've still got 35 minutes left. I'm going to just skip through part of it, just checking the percentages. 10%, 10%, 16%, pretty good. And there we go. That is Cold Harbor all 3 days. We took about 1,300 losses total. After medicine, it's a little more, 10,500. Killed about 73,000, so about almost a 7-to-1 ratio. It's pretty decent. I still think the 5,000 to 3,000 might be better, but came out of that pretty well. Bunch of captures. Units did really well, as unsurprisingly the snipers and artillery lost a couple generals. Most of them were wounded, so we're getting set. Got a lot of 61s, ton of Whitworth TSs, bunch of 63s. So much supply. 10, 20 pounders is always nice. A few more we could have gotten on the left, but it's hard to get them. Bunch of JF Browns. Might just sell those. I'll talk about that more in camp. And even more supplies. So just looking through the units, you know, pretty good numbers on all of those. Pretty good numbers on most of the infantry. Higher losses on that 11-2 rifle than I really would have liked. But most of the casualties are really on, a lot of the casualties are on the musket units, which is where I wanted them. so can't really complain about that. Elder is that last unit that took me forever to get rid of, so he did a lot of damage. See why I worked so hard to get rid of the artillery. You can also see those skirmishers, how much damage they inflict. You know, if I could get rid of those faster. Wainwright is, and I think Palmer were units on the left flank. Wainwright's one of those 3-star oversized brigades that I wasn't able to get to. Lots of snipers showing up. Infantry doesn't really do a whole lot. That changes a whole lot if you screw up the left flank. If you fight hard on the left flank, you get some really high infantry kill values on their side. So the fact that they don't have any infantry that's very high is reflective of the fact that I was able to play that flank well and got lucky, I would say. In terms of losses, yeah, mostly the musket units. Getting that 11-2 rifle, a couple other rifle units took decently high losses, but overall that's pretty fine. We're going to be in really good shape to set up again for the battles going forward. And just taking a look at what did the damage. All skirmishers, and I guess there's 2 infantry units that even crack the top 10. Everything else is snipers and artillery, and then most of the rest of it I was able to kill off. So there we go. That's what, plus 3,000 in recruits with everything all said and done. Maybe plus 4,000. Most of these units are in pretty good shape. These guys didn't fight much. These guys all fought a lot. Not very many promotions, but pretty good XP gain in a lot of cases. A couple of these guys didn't have a lot to do. There's a lot of sections of the battle where you really only focus on one point, and it's hard to get everyone in on the action. But made good progress. We might even be able to get some of that artillery up to 2-star when we if we swap in better officers. Hard to say. Score did pretty well, and more importantly, the numbers are pretty high on these. Most of our units are all above 1,000. Some of them are 1,200, 1,400. All really good news going into later battles. Lost some officers, but we'll be able to fix that. Cavalry took high losses like usual, but happens. Really happy with all this 2-star artillery here. We should be able to probably be able to get, even if we can't get them 3-star, we'll be able to do it at the end of the side battles, I think, because those are real artillery heavy for me. But yeah, these units are all in pretty good shape. We'll be able to boost them back up without too much trouble, mostly recruits. And the other thing I'm happy to see is we got a lot of melee value. A lot of melee skill went up, which is a part where my army is usually very weak because I just don't focus on it very much. And it's useful to have it up there for some of the later battles. All 3-star artillery, doesn't have anywhere to go. It's still good. We took a few losses to a couple of guns here or there, but overall we did pretty well with that. Sometimes you can lose 4 or 5 24-pounders pretty easily. You see, we don't have a ton of weapons other than the 63s and the 61s, but we've got all this crap that I've been saving up for throughout the campaign, most of which I'm not going to use. And if I sell most of it off, I'm going to be able to hop up to like $1.5 million very, very easily. So we're going to be in really good shape going into the next series of battles. We'll be able to buy pretty much whatever we want. We've got plenty of officers stockpiled on both sides. Got 20,000 recruits, enough rifles to equip them all. Just got transfer, so didn't change a whole lot with armory or training. Still basically at the minimum for AI size, which isn't really going to do a whole lot at this point. These battles are pretty set. 67,000 there. I think that's about normal. And Hardened Pike, which is always an annoying battle. I think we're facing closer to, 82,000. Yeah, that's not going to be fun. And for Washington, 23,474 guns. That's about normal. Let's see what we have going into it. Alright, 88,258 guns. We could probably win this battle right now with that. We wouldn't have much of an army left by the end of it, but I'm pretty confident I could probably pull it off. So by the time we do the rest of it, we're going to be in real good shape. Okay, so that was a long battle, a lot of work. Took me a little longer to get it together and get a good result out of it. But hopefully that is helpful and shows a couple different options for getting through Cold Harbor. Thanks for sticking with me through this. I'll be back with the last 3 battles and we'll get this one wrapped up. Thanks for watching.